The setting sun painted the sky in hues of amber and crimson as Sheriff Samuel Yates rode into the town of Copper Creek, Arizona Territory, 1882. His dust-covered denim and weathered leather boots told the story of a man who'd spent far too many days in the saddle. But it wasn't rest he sought as he dismounted in front of the bustling saloon, it was answers. "Miss Holloway's been gone 3 days now," a frantic woman told him the moment he stepped through the swinging doors. The saloon fell silent as every eye turned to the tall, broad-shouldered lawman with piercing blue eyes and a week's worth of stubble on his jawline. "She went to deliver medicines to the Wilkins family out at their homestead and never came back." Samuel removed his hat, revealing sun-bleached brown hair that curled slightly at the ends. "Who's Miss Holloway?" he asked, his voice carrying the slight drawl of a man raised in Texas cattle country. "Hannah Owens," supplied the bartender, a stout man with gray at his temples. "Town's only nurse. Came out from Boston about a year ago. Smart as a whip and kind to boot." He polished a glass with a rag that had seen better days. "Her horse came back yesterday, saddlebags empty, no sign of her." A search party had already been organized, the bartender explained. They'd found nothing but empty desert and her abandoned medical bag near a dried-up creek bed 10 miles south of town. "She's lost in the desert," they cried, voices overlapping with concern and fear. Samuel's jaw tightened as he set his hat back on his head. "Then I'll find her or join her," he said, his words dropping into the hush room like stones. The statement wasn't bravado. Samuel Yates had spent his entire life in these lands. He'd learned to track from a Navajo scout when he was just a boy, and he knew the desert like he knew his own heartbeat. If Hannah Owens was still alive out there, he'd find her. By dawn, he was packed and ready. His faithful painted horse, Thunder, carried canteens, jerky, and supplies for both himself and the missing woman. As the sun crept over the eastern horizon, he studied the ground where her medical bag had been found. Small, delicate footprints led away from the creek bed, heading deeper into the Badlands. "She's smart," Samuel muttered to himself. "Heading for higher ground to look for landmarks." He followed her trail with the patience of a predator. The desert was merciless to those who rushed, and Hannah had already been out for 3 days. If she was still alive, it would be a miracle, and Samuel didn't much believe in miracles. But something about the determination in those footprints made him push Thunder harder than he ordinarily would. The tracks showed she'd been walking in circles at one point, disoriented under the punishing sun. Then they straightened out again, heading toward a distant mesa. The woman had fight in her. By midday, Samuel had reached the base of the mesa. The trail grew harder to follow on the rocky ground, but occasional scuff marks and disturbed stones told him he was on the right path. Halfway up a narrow path, he found a torn piece of blue fabric caught on a thorny bush. He tucked it into his pocket and pressed on. Near the summit, Thunder's ears pricked forward. Samuel drew his revolver, eyes scanning the terrain carefully. The horse wasn't spooked, he was alerting to something ahead. In the shade of a massive boulder, Samuel spotted a crumpled form. Hannah Owens lay unconscious, her lips cracked from dehydration, skin burned an angry red where her clothing didn't cover. Her honey blonde hair had come loose from its pins, and dust caked her once fine dress. But the gentle rise and fall of her chest told Samuel he hadn't arrived too late. He dismounted swiftly, kneeling beside her. "Miss Owens," he said, gently lifting her head. "Hannah. Can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Samuel uncorked his canteen and carefully tipped a small amount of water between her lips. She coughed weakly, then swallowed. "That's it," he encouraged. "Small sips now." After a few more careful administrations of water, her eyes opened, startling green eyes that widened in confusion and fear when they focused on his unfamiliar face. "It's all right," Samuel assured her. "I'm Sheriff Yates from Copper Creek. I've come to take you home." "The medicine," she whispered, voice rough as sandpaper. "Did they get the medicine?" Samuel was taken aback. After 3 days lost in the desert, Her first thought was for her patients. "I don't know, Miss Owens. But we need to get you back to town." He helped her sit up slowly, supporting her weight as she struggled to stay upright. "I can't," she protested weakly. "Too dizzy." "You don't have to do anything but hold on," Samuel told her. "Thunder and I will do the rest." With gentle efficiency, he lifted her onto his horse, then mounted behind her, one arm secure around her waist. Her head lolled against his chest as consciousness slipped away from her again. "Hang on," he murmured, though he wasn't sure if she could hear him. "Just hang on." The journey back was arduous. Samuel kept to the shadows wherever possible, stopping frequently to give Hannah small amounts of water. By nightfall, they'd made it only halfway back to town, and he was forced to make camp. He wrapped her in his bedroll and built a small fire, watching her face in the flickering light. Even with sunburn and chapped lips, Hannah Owens was beautiful. There was something in the determined set of her jaw, the slight frown between her brows even in unconsciousness, that spoke of character. He'd heard tales of the Boston nurse who'd come west to bring modern medicine to the frontier. The townsfolk said she worked tirelessly, treating everything from gunshot wounds to childbirth with equal dedication. As the night deepened, Hannah stirred. Her eyes opened clearer this time. "Where am I?" "Safe," Samuel answered. "About 5 hours from Copper Creek." She tried to sit up and winced. "My patients will still be there tomorrow," he finished firmly. "You need rest." Hannah studied his face across the fire. "You're the new sheriff," she said. "The one who tracked down the Mason gang." Samuel nodded, surprised she knew of him. "That was a few months back. I treated one of them before he went to prison," she explained. "He said the sheriff who caught them could track a ghost across Bear Rock." A small smile touched her lips. "I suppose he wasn't exaggerating. Your trail wasn't hard to follow," Samuel said, though it wasn't entirely true. "You kept moving toward landmarks. Smart thinking." "My father was a surveyor," Hannah said, accepting a cup of coffee from him with trembling hands. "He taught me to navigate by topography." As the night wore on, Hannah told him about her journey to deliver quinine to the Wilkins family, whose children had fallen ill with fever. A flash flood had washed out her intended route back, forcing her to find an alternate path. When her horse spooked at a rattlesnake and threw her, she'd been left alone with only her medical bag and canteen. "I thought I knew where I was," she admitted. "But the desert all looks the same after a while." Samuel nodded. He'd seen strong men driven to madness by the disorienting sameness of the Badlands. "You did well to survive 3 days out there. I wouldn't have lasted another," Hannah said quietly. "Thank you for finding me." Their eyes met across the fire, and something passed between them, a current of understanding that needed no words. They were both outsiders in their way, both dedicated to their duties above all else. Morning came with the promise of scorching heat. Samuel helped Hannah onto Thunder, and they set out before the sun could climb too high. Her strength was returning, but she leaned against him as they rode, his arms steady around her waist. "The town must have been worried," she said after a long stretch of silence. "Very," Samuel confirmed. "You're well regarded in Copper Creek." Hannah sighed. "It's my home now. I never thought I'd say that about a dusty frontier town, but there it is." "What brought you west?" Samuel asked, genuinely curious. Women like Hannah, educated, refined, rarely chose the hardships of territorial life. "My fiancé died," she said simply. "Consumption. I was a nurse at Massachusetts General, and I couldn't save him. Afterward, I couldn't bear to stay in Boston. Everything reminded me of him." She straightened slightly. "I saw an advertisement for a nurse in Arizona Territory. The idea of going somewhere completely different, somewhere I was needed. It felt right." Samuel understood that need for purpose better than most. "I'm sorry about your fiancé. It was 3 years ago," Hannah said. "The pain fades, but it changes you." She glanced back at him. "What about you, Sheriff?" What's your story? Samuel rarely spoke about his past, but something about Hannah's direct gaze made the words come more easily. Raised on a cattle ranch in Texas. My father was killed in a dispute over water rights when I was 16. Drifted for a while, then found I had a knack for tracking. Became a bounty hunter, then a deputy, and now a sheriff. And is Copper Creek home? She asked. The question gave him pause. It's where I am, he finally said. Home is a complicated notion for a man like me. Hannah nodded as if she understood perfectly. Perhaps home isn't always a place, she said softly. They reached Copper Creek by midday. The town erupted into activity as people spotted them riding in. Hannah was quickly whisked away by the doctor and a group of concerned women, while Samuel found himself surrounded by townsfolk eager for details of the rescue. He gave a brief account, downplaying his own role and emphasizing Hannah's resilience. Then he retreated to his small office at the jailhouse, unexpectedly unsettled by the sudden absence of the woman who'd been in his arms for the past day and a half. 3 days passed before he saw her again. Samuel was making his evening rounds when Hannah emerged from the doctor's residence, her medical bag in hand. The sunburn had faded to a light tan, and her hair was neatly pinned beneath a modest hat. She looked every inch the proper Boston nurse again, but Samuel couldn't forget how she'd looked in the firelight, determined even in her vulnerability. Sheriff Yates, she greeted him with a smile. I was hoping to see you. Miss Owens, he tipped his hat. You're looking well. Thanks to you, she said. I never properly thanked you for saving my life. Just doing my job, Samuel said, though finding lost travelers wasn't typically a sheriff's duty. Hannah tilted her head slightly. Was it? I think you went above and beyond what duty required. She held out a small package wrapped in brown paper. I wanted to give you this. Samuel accepted it curiously. You didn't need to, please, she interrupted. It would mean a great deal to me if you would accept it. Carefully unwrapping the paper, Samuel found a finely crafted compass, its brass casing polished to a warm glow. It was my father's, Hannah explained. You said home is a complicated notion for you. Perhaps this will help you find your way, wherever you need to go. Samuel was speechless. The gift was personal, valuable, not something to be given lightly. I can't take this, he protested. You already have, Hannah pointed out with a hint of stubbornness. And I won't take it back. Her expression softened. Consider it a token of friendship, if nothing else. Something shifted in Samuel's chest, a feeling he couldn't name but recognized as dangerous. Thank you, he managed. I'll treasure it. Over the following weeks, their paths crossed with increasing frequency. Samuel found reasons to visit the doctor's office where Hannah worked. Hannah seemed to time her errands to coincide with his patrols. They exchanged books. She lent him Emerson and Thoreau. He shared dime novels that made her laugh. The town noticed. Gossip spread about the serious sheriff and the pretty nurse, but neither acknowledged the whispers. They were friends, nothing more, though each privately wondered if that was entirely true. Summer gave way to fall, and with the cooler weather came a new threat. A gang of outlaws had been terrorizing small towns throughout the territory, and intelligence suggested Copper Creek might be their next target. Samuel doubled the night patrols and trained a handful of deputies. Hannah found him at his office late one evening, poring over maps of the town. You should rest, she scolded, setting a basket on his desk. I brought you supper. I'm not hungry, Samuel insisted, though the aroma of fresh bread and stew made his stomach rumble traitorously. Liar, Hannah said, but her smile took the sting from the word. She began unpacking the basket. Eat. Then you can tell me what has you looking so worried. Between bites of the best meal he'd had in weeks, Samuel explained the situation. Hannah listened attentively, asking questions that revealed a surprisingly strategic mind. You're planning to face them alone, she said when he'd finished. It wasn't a question. With the deputies, Samuel corrected. 3 inexperienced men against a gang of 7 hardened criminals. Hannah countered. Those aren't favorable odds, Sheriff. Samuel sighed. What would you have me do? The nearest marshal is 2 days' ride away. Hannah leaned forward. Let the town help. There are men here who can shoot, women who can tend to the wounded. We can set traps, create diversions. I won't put civilians in danger, Samuel said firmly. We're already in danger, Hannah argued. But together we might stand a chance. Their eyes locked in a battle of wills. Samuel wasn't used to being challenged. Most people deferred to his authority without question. But Hannah matched him stubbornness for stubbornness, concern for concern. I can't lose you, he said without thinking, then froze as he realized what he'd admitted. Hannah's expression softened. And I can't lose you, she replied quietly. So perhaps we should work together to ensure neither happens. The air between them crackled with unspoken feelings. Samuel stood abruptly, moving to the window to break the tension. I'll consider your suggestion, he conceded. That's all I ask, Hannah said, standing to leave. At the door, she paused. Samuel, she said, using his given name for the first time. You don't have to carry every burden alone. After she left, Samuel took out the compass she had given him, running his thumb over its polished surface. The needle pointed steadily north, unwavering in its purpose. He was beginning to understand that his own heart had found its true north as well, and it pointed directly to Hannah Owens. The outlaws arrived at dawn 3 days later, but instead of the easy target they expected, they found a town ready for them. Following Hannah's plan, Samuel had organized the townspeople into teams. The blacksmith and his apprentices had crafted caltrops to slow the horses. The shopkeeper's wife and her friends had prepared bandages and medicines. The saloon owner and his regulars formed a second line of defense behind Samuel and his deputies. The battle was brief but intense. 2 outlaws fell to Samuel's precise shooting, and another was wounded by the elderly farmer who'd positioned himself on the roof of the general store. When the gang's leader realized they'd lost the element of surprise, he ordered a retreat, but not before firing a final, spiteful shot toward the town's defenders. Samuel heard Hannah's cry of pain before he saw her fall. She'd been tending to a wounded deputy when the bullet struck her shoulder. Cold fury washed over him as he raised his rifle and took aim at the fleeing outlaw. The shot found its mark, and the man tumbled from his saddle. The remaining gang members disappeared into the distance, but Samuel barely noticed. He was already running to Hannah's side, heart pounding with fear. I'm all right, she insisted, even as blood soaked through her sleeve. It's just my shoulder. You shouldn't have been out here. Samuel growled, helping her to her feet. You should have stayed inside with the other women. Hannah's eyes flashed. I go where I'm needed, Sheriff. You, of all people, should understand that. Despite his worry, Samuel felt a grudging admiration for her courage. He escorted her to the doctor's office, waiting anxiously while her wound was cleaned and bandaged. When the doctor finally allowed him to see her, Hannah was sitting up in bed, pale but alert. Don't you dare lecture me, she warned as he approached. Samuel shook his head. I wouldn't dream of it. He sat beside her bed, removing his hat. You were right about the town. We couldn't have done it without them. We make a good team, Hannah said with a tired smile. We do, Samuel agreed. Which is why I'd like to propose a more permanent arrangement. Hannah's eyes widened. Sheriff Yates, are you? Not yet, Samuel interrupted with a rare smile. But I would like to court you properly, Miss Owens, if you're agreeable. The blush that spread across Hannah's cheeks was answer enough, but she nodded for good measure. I would be very agreeable to that, Sheriff. The courtship of Sheriff Samuel Yates and Nurse Hannah Owens became the talk of Copper Creek. He escorted her to church on Sundays and brought her wildflowers from his patrols. She saved the best pieces of pie for him at social gatherings and mended his shirts when they tore. They were often seen walking together in the evenings, deep in conversation that ranged from literature to law enforcement to medicine. 3 months after the outlaw attack, Samuel received a telegram offering him the position of U.S. Marshal for the territory, a prestigious promotion that would require him to leave Copper Creek. He found Hannah at the schoolhouse, where she was teaching the children about basic hygiene. "Could I speak with you?" he asked when the lesson ended. The seriousness of his tone made her frown with concern. They walked to the small garden behind the church, where privacy could be found among the desert blooms that Hannah herself had planted and tended. "I've been offered a marshal's badge," Samuel said without preamble. Hannah's face registered surprise, then pride, then understanding. "You'll be leaving," she said softly. "That depends," Samuel replied, taking her hands in his. "I won't go without you, Hannah." Her breath caught. "What are you saying?" Samuel withdrew a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a modest gold ring set with a single pearl. "I'm saying that I love you. That you've become my home, the true north my heart follows. I'm asking if you would do me the tremendous honor of becoming my wife." Tears welled in Hannah's eyes. "Samuel Yates, when you found me in that desert, I was lost in more ways than one. You didn't just save my life, you gave me a reason to truly live again." She squeezed his hands. "Yes, I will marry you. And I will follow you wherever your duty leads us." Samuel slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into his arms for a kiss that promised a lifetime of devotion. They were married 2 weeks later in the same church garden where he had proposed. The entire town attended, celebrating the union of two people who had given so much to their community. As they exchanged vows under an arch of desert flowers, Samuel thought back to the day he'd heard those fateful words in the saloon. "She's lost in the desert." They had cried, and he had answered, "Then I'll find her or join her." He hadn't known then how prophetic those words would be, that in finding Hannah, he would also find himself, and that together they would build a home that transcended any physical location. The couple left Copper Creek the following month, bound for the territorial capital where Samuel would take up his new position. But they returned often over the years, bringing their children to know the town where their parents had found each other. 20 years later, long after Arizona had achieved statehood, an aging Marshal Samuel Yates and his wife, Dr. Hannah Yates, who had eventually earned her medical degree, retired to a small ranch outside of Copper Creek. Their oldest son had become a lawyer, their daughter a teacher, and their youngest boy showed signs of following in his father's law enforcement footsteps. On warm evenings, Samuel and Hannah would sit on their porch, watching the desert sunset paint the sky in the same colors that had been present on the day they first met. The compass Hannah had given him so long ago sat on the mantelpiece inside, its purpose fulfilled. Samuel no longer needed it to find his way home, he simply had to look beside him, where Hannah had always been and would always remain. "Do you ever regret it?" Hannah asked one such evening, her hand still fitting perfectly in his despite the passage of time. "Coming to find me that day?" Samuel smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening with the genuine emotion that only she had ever fully awakened in him. "Not for a single moment," he assured her. "Finding you in that desert was the beginning of everything good in my life." "And to think," Hannah mused, "it all started because I got lost." "No," Samuel corrected gently. "It all started because I found you. And in finding you, I found myself." As darkness settled over the desert they both loved, their silhouettes merged into one against the fading light, two souls who had weathered storms and crossed deserts to build a love as enduring as the land around them, as steadfast as a compass needle pointing true north, as certain as the promise Samuel had made and kept all those years ago, to find her or join her, in this life and beyond.